Hello from Manila. Thank you very much for inviting me to come speak about Philippine food, something that's very close to my heart. I want to thank the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C., headed by Charge d'Affaires Patrick Chuasoto and the Rita M. Cacas Foundation, and very much also the offices of the Cultural Diplomacy and Public Diplomacy of our Department of Foreign Affairs here in Manila. Without them, I would not be able to do this. I'm Amy Besa, and along with my husband and partner, Chef Romy Doratan, we have been running a restaurant for 21 years in New York City. We first started with Cendrillon, it means Cinderella in French, in which we opened in Soho in Manhattan in 1995, and that lasted for 13 and a half years. And then we closed that in early 2009, and we moved to Brooklyn, Ditmas Park, where we now have Purple Yam. We decided to change the name from Cendrillon to Purple Yam because we really wanted to show people how much we love the Philippines and our ingredients. So that really locates us. And because now that Filipino food is catching a lot of people's attention, the media is now doing a lot of stories about Philippine food, and the ube is now one of the trendiest ingredients that most chefs and bakers are using here in the United States. I just wanted to say and share that that's wonderful, but we need to make it a little bit more permanent. So that it is not just a trendy thing with 15 minutes of fame, but we will continue to love and treasure it. So in 2014, 2 years ago, my husband and I opened up a Purple Yam here in my childhood home in Malate, Manila, so which we call Purple Yam Malate. And then last year, we opened up a kiosk, also called Purple Yam, in Pasig. And the whole point of doing this is to act on what we have begun to learn about Filipino food, and is that we need to figure out what are the ingredients that characterize Filipino food. Because for me, we need to understand and learn about all the good things that grow in our environment. And that's the only way we can really appreciate Filipino food. Is that, when I look for ingredients all over the country, I look for three things: the unknown, the undervalued, and the ignored. And so down to the most basic elements like salt, sugar, black peppercorn vinegars, fish sauce, bagoong, all those wonderful ingredients that we use in our food. I look for the best of those, and I bring them to the table and share them with our diners. So when we talk about understanding Filipino food, a lot of people ask me, how do you do it? How do you find all these ingredients that you bring to the table? And the message I say is, you need to see when you look. You need to listen when you hear. You need to smell when you inhale and exhale. You need to taste whenever you eat something. And once we start paying attention to the flavors, the textures, the aromas of whatever grows around you, then you will begin to understand how good this food is. In 2006, my husband and I wrote a cookbook called Memories of Philippine Kitchens, which was published by a U.S. Publisher, Abrams, here in New York. I was able to travel all over the country and look and experience regional food and get to know all kinds of fruits, vegetables, nuts, all kinds of trees in our environment, I began to figure out how to look at this food. Because, there are just too many things to understand. You can accumulate as many information, as many ingredients, as many dishes that you discover, but until you begin to learn how to organize and understand the significance of everything you encounter, it will be very difficult to get wisdom and nuance and an insight and understanding of the food. So the first thing I learned was how do you look at a food, a cuisine? First, you have to look at the map. Okay, so here's a map of the Philippines. And looking at it, you understand it's an archipelago of 7,106 islands. And some people say that when it's low tide, there's more islands. But when you see that archipelago, the one thing you understand is it has one of the longest coastlines in the world. And what does that tell you about our food? That our food is basically seafood and a lot of salt because we have a lot of ocean around us. And then if you look at all the mountains, you know that there are fruits and vegetables and animals that live in those forests and those mountains. So that's the first thing I began to learn about the Philippines. And then, of course, there's food that was really ours. Food that is endemic and indigenous. Something that really grew on our soil for a long, long time. And then there's borrowed food. Food that came through war, through trade, through conquest, through colonialization, through globalization. So even if those food, all those fruits and cooking utensils and cooking methods are from other countries, if we took them and embraced them and used them and produced food that is from our palate and our aesthetic, then it's our food. So then I began to understand that there's food that was always ours and food that was borrowed but made our own. So that's how you have, for me, the food that was always ours are very sour. So that's the adobo, sinigang, and the kinilaw. And then borrowed foods are all the lumpia, pancit, the afritadas and embutidos and morcon from Spain. So, and then we are constantly borrowing food, even up to this day. You know, the OFWs bring a lot of Middle Eastern or Muslim spiced foods from wherever they work. That's already becoming part of our food. So, one of the things I really like to talk about is food that was always ours. Because that's really what I'm proud of. Because that's the one that's really from our soil. That really represents what our food really tastes like. Last year, I was able to experience rainforest, one of the last remaining rainforests in the Philippines, and that's only an hour away from Manila, which is called the Batulao Forest in Nasugbu, Batangas. Now, what is a rainforest? It means nothing in it grew with human intervention. Whatever you find in that forest really came from nature. And there are all kinds of trees, grasses, flowers, fruits, and even honey you can get from there. So we were invited by the people who own Holy Carabao Farm, and they hosted us because the Batulao Forest is privately owned. It's about 30,000 hectares and privately owned by a family here. But their goal is to preserve that. So we went there, and with forest guides helping us, we foraged for whatever we could eat, and then we made a meal out of it. I brought my staff from Purple Yam Malate with me, and we cooked a beautiful meal, something that we prepared from here. And then when we got to Batulao Forest, we added the things that we found there, that were foraged there. So there are many things that we discovered. The fruits that we found there, like the katmon, and then the grasses. There's the pugo-pugo. In Batulao Forest, I found one of the oldest trees in the country. It's the oak tree, and there are only about 1,000 trees remaining in the whole country. And then if you go all over the Philippines, there are many towns called Dao, which tells me that there were many trees before that. So now there are only 1,000 remaining. And then I found a beautiful vine called bagim, which contains mineral water inside between its nodes. And then we had flowers, makahiya flowers, and also mani-mani. Those are all edible. You can use them for food. And then we have grasses, like the pugo-pugo. And then we have our Philippine dates called tibi. Also have mushrooms. There's white mushrooms. And then the tenga ng daga, which is, in English, it's wood ear mushrooms. And they're all so delicious when you eat them, because they're all natural. They're not rubbery like the cultivated ones. So we made a meal. We cooked under open skies, and we brought our food and we married it with all the wonderful things we got from Batulao Forest. We had chicken binakol, which was normally cooked in bamboo tubes, but we pre-cooked them in coconut husk in bukod. And then we added ubad and ubod from the forest. Ubad is banana trunk, and ubod is hearts of palm. And then we had the trotter, the pata from the native black pig, and we cooked them with cassia, which we got from Maguindanao, which is our Philippine cinnamon. And we sweetened it with liguan honey, which is a native bee which is harvested from the forest. And then we had sotanghon, sauteed with all kinds of vegetables and topped with the tenga ng daga, which is wood ear mushroom. And then we ended the meal with iced dessert. We brought our ice cream, our homemade ice cream, and passion fruit sorbet and watermelon ice. And we topped it with mulberry compote that the Holy Carabao farm grows along the periphery of the Batulao Forest. So when we opened Malate here 2 years ago, I went around the country looking for the best ingredients. So I settled with salt from the salt beds of our family property in Zambales. And also we use tultul, which is from Guimaras. And also we display the tibao from Bohol. All of these salts are very, very difficult to extract. And a lot of families are now giving up that practice because it is it's back-breaking work, and there's not much money out of coming of it. So we are supporting these families that do this. And then we have black peppercorn from an organic farm in Rosario, Batangas. Our patis is real patis from Lingayen. Because one thing I found out, if you buy patis from the markets, a lot of them diluted the real patis with water, caramel, flavoring and coloring and more and sea salt. So we need to look for the best ingredients that we can find. So within a few months, I was able to accumulate 22 varieties of rice. A lot of them are heirloom rice from the Cordilleras, from the rice terraces. One thing about the heirloom rice is that you need to prove that they're heirloom because they have to belong to a family and they have to be grown from one generation to another. And then we also have native rice that we found from Mindoro and in Bukidnon and Isabela, Quezon. All of these areas, all of these regions produce native rice, and we must protect them because they are organic and they carry the flavors of the particular soil that they grow in. There are also sugars, palm sugars, that we must revive because they're all disappearing. We have 4 major types of palms: coconut, nipa, buri, and kaong. And all of those palms produce sap, which you can turn into sugar or syrup, or if you want to ferment them, they can become wine. And in the case of the nipa and the coconut, you can make lambanog out of them. So going to spirits now, we have our own native spirits other than the lambanog. One of the things we use is tapoy, which is rice wine, produced by the indigenous peoples of the Cordilleras. The one that we have is from Conor Apayao, and it's very, very difficult to transport it here. But it is so delicious. We use it in cocktails and cooking. As you can see, we used it in our fish, what we serve here in the restaurant. We also use it for clams and mussels. So you can do many things with it. How do you make a Filipino meal? So today we'll just show you something very basic. We started with the fish, right? Because as I said, seafood is one of our best ingredients because we have the best, the freshest seafood that we can get from all our 7,000 islands. So early in the morning, my chef goes to the market and buys live fresh fish. And for today, just to show you, we have the dapa or sole, right? And we prepared it by putting it on a bed of greens, native greens, which is talbos ng sayote. And we topped the fish with tapoy, with rice wine. And then we covered it with parchment paper and baked it. And it's really delicious. And then we paired it with pork adobo, pork belly adobo, which we braised in coconut sap vinegar from Catanduanes. And then we have vegetable fried and adlay rice. So we use here the omino, which is one of the most delicious heirloom rice we can get from Mountain Province. And again, as I said, I get this straight from the farmer whose family grew that rice for many, many generations. That's what we have, the sole, the pork adobo, and the vegetable and adlay rice. And for dessert, we have the buko pie with ube, okay? And then halo-halo. Our approach to halo-halo is we do not buy anything commercially made. We make every single ingredient there, except of course for the kaong and the nata, which are natural things. But those two items come straight from a friend of mine, Sunny Lua from Cavite, and he goes all over Cavite to look for the best nata kaong and he puts them in syrup and delivers, and we pick it up and get it from him. He also goes around Cavite to look for the best pinipig for me. The other ingredients for the halo-halo would be halayang langka, and halayang ube. Everybody thinks that halaya means ube, but it's not. Halaya means jam or preserve. So you can make halaya out of any fruit or anything that's sweet. We also have our candied singkamas made of grenadine and tapioca starch. The original concept for that is the Taptim Grove of Thailand, but they usually use water chestnuts, but I decided let's use singkamas. Now that the ube or the purple yam is very popular, I just wanted to say a quick word about it, that it's not a generic tuber. We're probably the only culture that has that or uses a purple yam the way we do in our cooking. We are now using it in breads. We make our own purple yam flour. My husband has made it into pastas and pizza crust and pancakes. You can do many things with it. There are chefs who've made soup with it and all kinds of concoctions with it. Just to say, the ube is very interesting because they come in many varieties and they taste very differently if you grow them in different regions and in different soils. They can grow up in the mountains. They can grow up in flat areas like Cavite, and there are light colored ones. There are dark colored ones. The fragrances, the aromas are all very different. Just like the sapiro that we get from Benguet. I remember the first time we cut into the sapiro. I could smell it's almost like vanilla or pandan. I could smell it across the kitchen. And that's when I started thinking, we don't know much about this ube. We all take it for granted because we can put it in our halo-halo, but do we know anything about it? I think it's about time we started learning all the different things, all the different varieties that come from our country. As a final word, I just want to say that I have totally fallen in love with Philippine food once I started to learn about it. And when you cook Filipino food in New York or in the United States, I feel that everyone, even the non-Filipinos, become Filipinos. We all become Asians, and then we all become Americans. We're all very unified by showing our love for food. And every single day that I discover more ingredients, more flavors, more aromas from our soil, from our environment, from our waters, and from our air, and the mountains and the trees, I begin to understand, I begin to have a deeper love for our country, our people, and our culture. So, food is very unifying, and it is a gesture of love, especially when Filipinos cook it.